Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Dr. Judy, WTF, What the Freud. And tonight is going to be an interesting conversation, I hope, because I just love when my audience calls in. So please call in. This is a call-in show, and I'm here to answer your questions and mind map and break down all the issues that everyone is having through the lens of the Be the Cause Mind Map system, which I'm going to describe in a minute. And this show tonight's topic is co-parenting with a narcissist. So if you're co-parenting with a narcissist, or if you've divorced a narcissist and have to continue to co-parent with one, my sympathies. It's hard enough to be married to one and recuperate from the narcissistic abuse that you probably have experienced, let alone be tied to that person because of having to co-parent. So we're going to jump right in. And again, this is a call-in show, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And I want to start by explaining the mind map as a lens through which we could see the narcissistic system gone wrong. So thank you so much for putting it up there. We've got panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3 are about the past of wounds of childhood, how we react to these wounds. In other words, what our amygdala or primitive brain is doing to react to wounds of childhood and how we encode them. If we're married to a narcissist or someone with extremely high markers for narcissism, exhibiting qualities such as lack of empathy, exhibiting symptoms of control, exhibiting symptoms that demean, devalue, destroy, and objectify people, then this is what we are talking about. Chances are that one or both of your parents were narcissists, because what we tend to do, and why I call the show Dr. Judy WTF, is because WTF stands for what the Freud, such as in Freud's repetition compulsion. And we tend to repeat old patterns that our parents set down within us. And so chances are that we will look for somebody familiar and do a spin-off of that particular blueprint and enroll somebody that treats us that way into our life. And the point of the mind map is to heal from childhood wounds, heal from narcissistic abuse, and I'll get into how to do that as I get into the show. So I want to start connecting dots for everybody. 1, 2, 3 is the past. Wounds of childhood, which there are 5 of. There's obviously physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, and then there's emotional neglect, physical neglect as well, and control and smothering. And oftentimes the cases that I see are people who come from parents that are particularly cold and controlling. And so when a child is exposed to parents that are controlling and cold, meaning they don't have a sense of empathy, and on top of it, they use the child to control and manipulate and objectify the child to meet their own needs, then we end up with people who are either people pleasers and tend to be vulnerable to marrying narcissists, or they tend to identify with the narcissist and take on these traits themselves. So what happens when you are co-parenting with a narcissist? The first thought I had in mind is if you are divorced from a narcissist or divorcing from a narcissist. Let's talk about that for a little while, because that's where you have to separate and co-parent and be on different schedules. And in essence, the system has now changed radically. Whereas before you were so-called family, you had a family system of you and your partner and the children. And now the divorce and all of the litigious aspects of the divorce and all of the emotional aspects of the divorce come into play. And sometimes who gets caught in the middle, monkey in the middle? The children. So what happens when you're divorcing a narcissist is, and you have to co-parent with a narcissist, is that you have to be very, very careful. And you really have to create boundaries, and you have to leave paper trails, and you have to be very, very careful about how you talk to your children about your spouse, because it will be used against you. And so it's sort of like tiptoeing through a minefield sometimes. And then the children, of course, they're caught in the middle, and usually they're forced to pick one parent over another, because the parent with narcissistic qualities might want to enroll them in their club, so to speak. And in doing so, they may demean and devalue and destroy the other parent, and even twist the arm, the proverbial arm of the child or children, by rewarding them for behaviors that hurt the other parent. So I'll get into some examples, because there are plenty of examples that I have in mind. And I see this on a regular basis in the treatment room, where people come in and they're destroyed by the narcissist and the system gone wrong there. And now they're forced to keep ties with the narcissistic ex, whether it be mom or dad, and co-parent with the narcissist. So I'm going to refer to an article that I pulled up by Stephanie Sarkis, PhD, and she has 10 tips for co-parenting with a narcissist. And I think that these are just good things to keep in mind, so that you have some sort of a skill set in mind, and that you can begin to set down these very important boundaries that are going to serve you well in the process. So number one, set boundaries about communication. So a lot of times the other parent will try to interrupt your good times. I remember a situation where a patient was complaining that she was throwing a birthday party for her son, and every 5 minutes the ex would call, insisting that the son be returned on time. And in this case, dinner was served late, and there were presents to unwrap, and so on and so forth. But the ex-spouse, the ex-narcissistic spouse, was hell bent on making sure that the children's party would be ruined, and that they would be left with a very negative feeling about the evening. So these are just some of the tricks that a parent might pull to demean and devalue the destroy. So what do? You set boundaries about communication. So a good one here might be something like, look, I'm picking up our son, and I'll be dropping him off hopefully the next day, so you don't even have to run into any time schedules. And we will not be taking phone calls during dinner. And then shut your phone off, period. And this sets a very, very strong message to the person whose intention is to demean, devalue, and destroy, and actually alienate your child from you. The next thing she talks about here is seek a parent coordinator through the courts. And sometimes in highly litigious divorces, highly litigious cases, it's really important that you get a buffer involved. And they do have people who can act as a parent coordinator in high conflict cases. And she also talks about having a guardian appointed for your child. So these are the buffers that she's suggesting, so that you don't have to take the hit. And it's important that you don't expose yourself to daily events where you're being manipulated, where you're being put down, and so on and so forth. The fourth point, she says, is to refuse to make your child a pawn. Keep your side of the street clean. Do not use your child to convey messages to the other parent. Do not vent to your child about their parent. If you need to vent, talk to a friend or seek therapy. Do not use your child to to do reconnaissance or fact-finding missions. Your children are not your spies, okay? And they're not to be interrogated about how was it at mommy's house or daddy's house so that you can note take and present to the court. That's a horrible position for your child to be in. In other words, don't mine your child for information about what is going on at the other parent's house. Now, I'll follow this up with a caveat. If you think that your child is being abused physically or verbally, it's going to be important for you to get the facts. And one way to open that conversation up is just to simply ask, how are you doing at mom's house? How are you doing at dad's house? And if you have a strong relationship with your son or daughter, it'll be enough for that question to elicit responses such as, mom, I'm really scared of dad, or, mom, I'm really scared of mom. And when I'm at mommy's house or when I'm at daddy's house, let the child vent. And if that's the case, then further action has to be taken. And unfortunately, in some states, spanking your child is still okay. And in some families, it's okay. And in some cultures, it's okay. Study after study shows that if you use physical means to punish your child might then act out on other children or might even act out on you. So in my opinion, I don't think it's the best way to parent, and it would be preferable, of course, if the two parents had similar parenting styles. And I know that in divorce cases, they have parenting courses so that parents can learn how to co-parent, and parents can somehow at least attempt to get on the same page. But remember, in a narcissistically injured system, there is no empathy, and control is king. In a healthy system, love is king or queen, not control. And so what happens with narcissistic injuries is that the child grows up to believe that there's not really a lot of trust in the world, and that people are to be used and people are to be manipulated, and they don't really have a sense of an agency that they could really be lovable, and that people could love them just for who they are. And that makes it difficult for that person to let go and trust that they could actually have a real authentic bond with their child, because they never did so with their blueprint, their family of origin, because that bond was usually toxic, and it was based on, you do this for me and therefore I'll do that for you. Very, very transactional. So this is a call-in show. So I'm hoping that people will pick up the phone, and I want to hear from you. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are in a relationship with a narcissist and have to parent with that narcissist, or have divorced a narcissist and are forced to co-parent with a narcissist. And it's very, very tough on the psyche to be divorcing a narcissist. It takes a lot of courage because, again, especially when it comes to legal matters, they tend to be very, very controlling, and they will do anything to win. Most likely the divorces are more expensive and more litigious and more contemptuous than the average divorce. And this obviously impacts the children. So it's just a very, very messy system to extricate from. And so I'm sure that people who are listening have had similar experiences or know people who have similar experiences. And please call in so we could talk about this, and we can get some strategies in place so that you don't get more injured in the process. Here's another way also to deal with this horrific situation, is have a detailed custody agreement. With these in these situations, you usually can't be loose. In situations where both parents are friendly and cooperative, you can leave it much more open and say, hey, my little son wants to be with you, Daddy. Why don't you take him for the day, even if it's not the custodial particular day, or vice versa. In the case of these divorces or co-parenting with narcissists, you just can't be loose, because what happens is when you're loose, you're creating a situation where it could be tit for tat. So you have that day, so I'll take this day, and that day might be a day where you really, really want to have your child with you. So I would say that in these cases, it's just best to hold more strict boundaries. So have a detailed, excuse me, sneeze, that is not coming out, hopefully it will, have a detailed custody agreement. See a family law attorney and let that attorney know that your ex-spouse is high conflict. It's a very common word, high conflict divorces. Have every detail written out. Who pays for what, percentage of medical costs, firm visitation days and times, visitation plans for all holidays. Your attorney can give you advice on how to handle high conflict situations when they arise. And hopefully pick an attorney who is savvy with how to divorce a narcissist. I did an excellent show with attorney Rebecca Zong, and she had me on her show. So check her out. And I know that her people are checking me out, because we both specialize in recovering from narcissistic abuse, and her specialty is the legal end of it. And obviously my specialty and the team's specialty is the psychological end of things. So please know that you're going to need psychological protection, you're going to need legal protection, and the best thing that you could do is select your team really carefully, because there are a lot of attorneys out there who don't know much about narcissism and treat the divorce from a narcissist in the same way, assuming that there's good faith, and assuming that people will not manipulate, and assuming that people will tell the truth. And that's just not the case. So it takes a special kind of skill. So suggestion here, keep detailed records. If there's something that doesn't smell right, doesn't feel right, is out of the range of comfort, write it down and keep a paper trail. If the emails are contemptuous, or if they're threatening, then you might want to save those emails. Obviously, do not erase those emails, and take notes for yourself that you can present in court if you have to, and be very judicious about keeping detailed records. If your child's parent did not show up for visitation, write it down. Also write down the date and time of phone calls, and use direct quotes if need be. If you meet with an attorney, they will want the documentation. If you're considering recording phone calls, keep in mind that state laws vary regarding recording conversations. In many states, you must notify the other party before you record. Seek the advice of an attorney first. So again, this is no walk in the park, and no time for you to be unarmed. That's why you want to really learn a lot about narcissism, divorcing a narcissist, how to deal with your children in the process, and mainly recover from narcissistic abuse yourself. If you're coming out of a breakup from a narcissist, chances are that you're feeling depleted, that you're feeling used, that you probably got the short end of the stick, because they're very clever at manipulating and even lying and stacking cards against you. So it's a very, very injurious process. Plus, I want to add to that it's possible that you still have a very toxic bond to that person. Just because a person isn't right for you, it doesn't mean that you have had the chance to deconnect from that person, meaning withdraw your energy, your emotional energy to that person. So this might be a very, very painful process for you if your husband or wife has started dating another person, and you have to watch a man that you once loved or a woman that you once loved um, toss you aside and substitute you in for another. It's a very, very painful process. And when you are down and out, it's really, really hard to parent in the first place. And please seek therapy, because it wouldn't be unusual if you're suffering from more depression, more anxiety, feelings of worthlessness, and so on. And then this creates a lot of chaos. So let's now go to panel number 3 for a minute and see what this divorce might be activating for many people. So panel number 3 is our encoding. And our encoding are all the messages that we absorb from our family of origin. And I'm referring to negative core beliefs such as I'm not good enough, or I'm a loser, or I'm ugly, or I'm stupid, or I'm incompetent. In some way, somehow, the narcissistic co-parent has a way of triggering off the I'm ugly, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable core belief. And look what happens. Panel 4, 5, 6. And I call this the WTF area. So if you go to panel 4, 5, 6, you can see that following the trigger is chaos. You break down physically, emotionally, financially, health-wise, and it just feels sort of like the picture depicts it, that you're flying off in space and everything's unraveling and you have no place to really land, and there's no safety, and there's a lot of toxicity, and you don't know what to do with yourself as your life is unraveling in front of you, and your children are part of this chaotic system now as well. So what happens when we're in chaos is we tend to try to defend ourselves, and people use different methods of defense mechanisms. Some people drink more, some people smoke more, some people self-medicate with other drugs, some people watch porn, some people stay on video games for too long, some people shut down. And obviously this is going to have an effect on the family system. It's going to have an effect on your children. So what happens sometimes is that your ability to parent is compromised, and the defense mechanisms that you use may be held against you. That's the sad part. So here you are divorcing this narcissist, and you're falling into chaos, not doing well. So you start increasing your drinking, for example, and then your ex-spouse says, hey, I want more custody of the children because I understand that you're drinking more, or I understand that you got a DUI, or I understand that little Mary's not comfortable around you because she could smell alcohol on your breath. So this is where people can checkmate you, and you have to be really, really, really careful. And that's where the therapy comes in, because you don't want to revert to unhealthy defense mechanisms that can be used against you and ultimately break you down. So I want to talk a little bit about what to do about this, because we've talked about the legal end, we've talked about the counseling, the keeping records, detailed custody agreements, and so on and so forth, but we haven't talked about psychological treatment. And it's really, really important to seek psychological treatment. And we have 2 videos to help you through this that go along with companion pieces to therapy. One is the general video that I created called the 9-panel journey to mind map video, Journey to Healing. And that's a breakdown of the mind map. So it's me conducting the entire video series. There's a case study in there, and I go panel by panel through childhood wounds and their reactions and encodings, and the chaos and the defenses and the breakdowns, and how to morph out of all the mess. And that's just a lot of content. It comes with the PDF of the book. It's not a video. Actually, it's a Vimeo. It's a download, and it's accessible online. Once you purchase this, then you code in, and then you can use the services of a team member to walk you through this mind map journey. So it's essential that you heal your own narcissistic wounds, because what can happen is that you might feel so compromised by the experience, and especially when your own children are pitted against you. It's like a version of, it is an apparent alienation syndrome. You've got to heal on a deeper level, because then you're just going to be activated and fall into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns, and do the what the Freud loop through. The second video is a more pointed video to specifically recovering from narcissistic abuse. It is a video that I created that is hosted by my life coach, Yitz Epstein, who is absolutely passionate about helping people recover from narcissistic abuse. And this particular video focuses on a lot of aspects that narcissistic abuse leaves us with, such as a real feeling of being demeaned and devalued and destroyed, recovering from being used, recovering from being gaslit, recovering from feeling less than on a lot of levels. So this particular video is really detailed and goes deeply into recovering and healing from narcissistic abuse. And I want everybody to know that we have remarkable people on the team, and we even have people who work on a more sliding scale basis. If you need that, just reach out to me. You can always get me at Dr. Judy, psychologicalhealingcenter.com. And I have an Instagram page, and I have a lot of blogs on my website that you can read about. And most importantly, knowledge is king here. It's very, very important, because when you're armed with knowledge and you see it coming, then you don't have to be a victim to the system gone wrong. You can start to be the cause. You could put yourself in a power position. You can avoid the pitfalls of the manipulations and so on. So it's sort of like the game of chess. If you are one step ahead of your opponent, and if you know what's coming next, it's easier to avert and avoid and protect yourself. So do that. And then you will find that you take control of yourself, which is step number one. And then you take control of your children and the systems. And then it is easier to set these boundaries. It is easier to face the painful triggers that the narcissist is constantly trying to trigger you with, because the point of the mind map is to get to the place where these triggers are dismantled, the feelings are processed, and that you heal from the abuse, so that you're not constantly at the effect of the system gone wrong. And please do call in. There's plenty of time for us to discuss this. Bring it on. Any case studies that you want to present, pick my brain. I'm here, free therapy on air, and you don't even have to use your name. You can call in anonymously, and I respect that. And let's get some examples of people who are going through this horrific process and how to co-parent with a narcissist. So if there are any calls coming in, there is a call coming in. Awesome. Hi. What's your name? Did you say there was a call coming in?
I don't think there's a call coming in.
Oh, wait a second. Was that a call? Not sure.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. All right. So call in, and I'll continue on this topic, because there's so many people that I've treated who've suffered from this, and sometimes it takes years to recover. So I want to get a little bit more into the toxic bond, because again, just because you divorce somebody with these narcissistic traits, it doesn't mean that you have emotionally divorced from them. And it's very likely that there's still a piece of you that is projecting positive qualities onto them, because that's a part of how they got to you in the first place. I think many of you have heard of the term love bombing. And love bombing is where the person that's courting you brings it on thick and heavy. Oh, you're so beautiful. You're so wonderful. I know you're my soulmate. Let's get married next week. You're the most wonderful woman I've ever met, or you're the most handsome man I've ever met. And so there's a lot of idealization and a lot of projection, a lot of love bombing. Why? Because the person wants to land you before their true colors come out. It's called the false self. And narcissists are known to build a false self because what's lacking deep down underneath the surface is a sense of object constancy, meaning that they have a very, very fluctuating sense of self, and they're needing a lot of mirroring and attunement and your positive regard to them, for them to prop them up. So how they will get that from you is to love bomb you so that you can put them up on the pedestal, and also you think that you're being put up on a pedestal until you're not on that pedestal any longer, and the walls come crumble. Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall, and the narcissistic shell is cracked, and it's not a pretty sight. And there you are, horrified that the person that you've been sleeping with, a person that you've shared your children with, a person that you've shared everything with, mind, body, soul, finances, everything, is now acting this way. Why is he or she acting this way? Because you are no longer their possession. You are on the other side of the camp. You're on enemy camp, and they are bound to draw that line, and they're bound to very frequently use the children to get them on their side so that they can sometimes act as flying monkeys to demean and devalue and destroy. And imagine how destructive this is on the children when they're actually getting rewarded and told that mommy did this and daddy did this, and they're basically poisoning the minds of the children. This is commonly called parent alienation syndrome, and that's what happens when you co-parent with the narcissist. You have to be really, really careful of parent alienation syndrome. And I just know too many people who call and say, "What should I do, Dr. Judy? My children have been poisoned by my ex. My daughter hasn't talked to me in 2 years now. My ex told her all kinds of rumors about me, and I don't know how to deal with this." So this is really beyond injurious when your own children have been poisoned and you don't know how to cope with a thing like this. So what do? First of all, you have to get healthy and strong. You have to get clear, because you cannot be gaslit into believing that you're a horrible, terrible person if you're not a horrible, terrible person. And you can't be gaslit into questioning yourself when you're very clear on your behavior. Now, if you've done something that's less than wonderful or even good or ethical or any of that, then I very much support the notion of self-reflecting and self-correcting. And this you do in the course of therapy. And this you can even do with your children. If there's something that you've done to hurt the bond between your son and your daughter, you get to correct it. But what doesn't happen in less contentious cases is that you don't have to deal with a spouse that is poisoning your children against you. You could simply clean it up with your son or your daughter. Now, remember that people co-parent children at various ages, and I'm a big fan of attachment theory. I talk a lot about John Bowlby and attachment and the importance of having the mother-infant bond stay intact early in life, or the primary caregiver baby bond be very, very intact, which means that if you're co-parenting a, a an infant, a 3-month-old, a 6-month-old, a small baby, you're not going to do that baby any emotional favors by having that baby go back and forth between the two parents. It's important that they have a primary, and that primary residence should be the primary residence of the person that is most attached to the baby. And it's usually one primary. So attachment theory is something that you should all read about. Dr. John Bowlby and Dr. Mary Ainsworth did a lot of research on children that were post-war children, what happened to them when they lost their families, and they discovered how important it is to have a secure bond with a primary caregiver. So it would be horrifically bad for a 3-month-old to spend a week with mom or a week with dad and a week off from mom and a week off from dad. That baby needs to stay put in one place, and then mom or dad could visit, or the secondary caregiver could visit, and then secure attachment could still be had. So even if you're divorcing a narcissist who will insist on taking the child, a young child, for longer periods of time than is emotionally healthy, I suggest that you seek some therapy around this and talk to your lawyers so that you can have age and stage appropriate parenting with the person that you are co-parenting with, particularly the person that you're divorcing or have divorced and are co-parenting with. So it's not about what's convenient for you or your ex or even your current partner. If you're still with this current partner, what's important is the well-being of your child. And that's what narcissism really is a system gone wrong where the parents put their own needs before the needs of the child. So if your own need is to see the child frequently, but you're the secondary caregiver, then you have to put your own needs aside and say, look, my daughter's only 3 months old, or my son is only 3 months old. My daughter's son is breastfeeding or needing the secure attachment. And so you've got to respect that, because if you don't respect that, what happens is that you're really creating an anxious attachment or disorganized attachment in that child, and you're setting that child up for having emotional issues, anxiety, depression, and so on and so forth, and creating what ultimately is what I refer to as the hole in the soul. And you can read all about this. It's in my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, and you can get a copy of the book from Amazon, or you can get a free copy of the book by reaching out to me, Psychological Healing Center. I'm happy to give you a free copy of this so that you can psychoeducate yourself. And the therapy actually is a psychoeducational process whereby you're healing so that you're not leaving your next generation with the multi-generational wounds that you incurred growing up. Because again, why are you in the predicament? Probably because you come from a system gone wrong. What can you do about it is that you can straighten out your system gone wrong and heal your childhood wounds so that you don't pass it on to the next generation. So I want to invite you again to call in. And if there are any call-ins that would like to ask questions or share their experience divorcing a narcissistic parent, co-parenting with a narcissist, or how they have experienced this parent alienation syndrome, which is beyond horrific. I've had people who haven't seen their children for years, haven't talked to their children. Children who buy into the lies and misperceptions and misconceptions of the manipulative parent, and this is beyond inhumane. And then how are they supposed to repair this when the other parent has basically trashed their reputation in the eyes of the child? This is very, very, very painful, and needs a lot of psychoeducation so that you don't fall into loose boundaries with people like this. You don't fall into the pain of being triggered and gaslit and so on. And you preserve your mental health and hopefully preserve the bond with your children. A couple of things that I also wanted to bring up. I think that's a call. Is that a call-in?
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for calling in. What is your name, please?
My name's Jen.
Nice to meet you. Have we spoken before?
We have probably, goodness, it's probably been about, I would say just over a year ago.
Okay.
That I was midst of a separation with a covert narcissist.
Okay.
And a lot.
So I'm sure you can identify with what I'm talking about here.
On every possible level, yes.
I'm so
absolutely.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Where are you? What part of the world you live in?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. So, how old are your children or your child?
They are currently 16 and 18.
Okay, and you're now divorced, or you're still in the process of divorcing?
After about a year and a half of the separation, we finally divorced as of January this year. Oh. So we're almost a year beyond the divorce.
Okay, and so how are the children doing with all of this?
I, for the first time today, received a very well communicated text from my college student, who is a brand new college freshman. We've completely reconnected, and it happened literally, I would say, almost overnight. And today's text just completely affirmed and validated our newfound relationship. So I'm very, very excited that there is hope.
Student is your daughter or son?
They're both girls.
They're both girls. And so they texted you, and what did they say to you?
Well, this is just the older one. The younger is a whole different story. Okay. But the older, just our communication was that she would like to come live with me on break when her break time comes, and that she is basically, she used the words awakened, but she has used words that suggest that she is seeing that she's been manipulated and controlled by her father.
Okay. And so if you could describe so people understand what I'm talking about and what you're talking about here, what kind of messages was your ex pumping into her head?
So, and this is it's a long story, so I'm going to keep it as very light as possible. But the stories are this. So when we went through our trial, our horrendous, nasty trial, because we were parallel parenting.
Okay.
Both my daughters.
Just describe what that means so people understand. What's parallel parenting?
Just absolutely not seeing eye to eye, cannot agree on any level whatsoever. Completely opposite. It's just, and unfortunately, you know, when you are in the position I'm in and you're trying to show co-parenting, especially when you're in separation, you have lawyers talking over your shoulder about how to handle what it looks like in the court system. And it's very difficult. It's quite the balance I put upon anyone. But so with the parallel parenting, what had happened was just a few months before the trial, my ex convinced the girls through money, basically anything dopamine related, you know, sugar, Disneyland dad all the day long, convinced them that they needed to live in with him momentarily, of which they did, and just in time for trial. So they were probably living with him 100% for all of 3 months. And because of their age, and because it was determined that we were parallel parenting, the judge simply said, well, whoever the girls are living with is whom I'm going to give parental responsibility and rights to. And it was almost like in a flash overnight, due to teens being teens, you know, and just being their own manipulative selves because they're young and, you know, they're exploring and they're taking advantage of both parents a little bit, being a bit unruly.
Devastating, Ron, devastating. So basically, the judge awarded custodial rights to your ex because they happened to be living there and they were, from my understanding, bribed to be there a lot because it was Disneyland versus doing homework and getting to bed at a certain hour and being responsible, something like that.
Right.
Wow.
That would be it. Right. And then as of January 4th, once the hearing concluded and the judge's ruling went through, he, of course, had full access to the girls and the story that he had created. And they didn't talk to me for months. And I started losing them more and more because he had explained to the girls, which I had learned, you know, later. I already kind of had an idea. But to learn from them that, you know, my rights were taken, that I was unfit, you know, that there were words being thrown around that, you know, I needed help. Well, I did need help.
I'm curious what stories he came up with to alienate you from your children. So maybe if you don't mind sharing examples, he would say to your children, your mother is this or that, or what would that be? What would the this or that be?
This gets really twisted and deep, but that I have a tendency to, and this is in the CFI report, mind you, as well, not a psychological CFI, a lawyer CFI, that had basically put out there and to the girls that I tend to have a problem that I go and tell the quote unquote story first, and that I'm telling professionals, I imagine there were professionals, meaning doctors, counselors, teachers, and such, that I get to them first, which is true because I took care of the needs of the household and the children. So of course, when there were communications that were needed with teachers or parental permission slips, field trips, you know, of course I was the one to go share the information first. And so that got very twisted with how he put it out to the world. And to top it off, being in a Catholic church community, a small one at that, he had convinced this smaller church community early on, planting seeds of, you know, whatever, my manipulation. I'm quote unquote the narcissist is what he's put out there. And so the girls receive not direct information, but they see in the community that how well dad is appreciated, and how they feel for him and his devastation. So,
Right.
he's crying, wolf, basically.
And this is something very common that people who tend toward this particular system, the narcissistic system, are often regarded in their community as wonderful, wonderful people, which is part of what confuses the children. Wow, dad's really loved by so many people. How could he be wrong? And so I guess it took a while for your daughter to come around and wake up and see some truths that she's now realizing.
Yeah, it is wonderful. I think that the most difficult part that she has shared in all of this is, the best way I can describe it is, as a child, don't bite the hand that feeds. And, when they see that dad is the one now in charge, it's like, well, we had to leave mom behind because we need to eat. That's the only way I can explain it. It's another.
Oh, I think it's a beautiful line. I use it often. And a child would rather be, Alice Miller talks about how a child always sees themselves as the bad one and the parent is the good one. And a lot of splitting takes place. So sometimes the same parent actually gets dumped on the most, and they get thrown out under the bus, because the more dangerous and conditional and controlling parent is the one that the children really have to watch out for, because that's the parent that the bond is iffy. If the kid doesn't do what that parent wants, then they're going to be dropped. So they've got to hang on for dear life and not bite the hand that feeds them, especially if they feel that the money is streaming from that source. So it gets really, really complicated. What about your other daughter? How's she doing with all this?
I'm still keeping the hope going. I think there's some light in it. All the stories, I'm sure, are very complex in and of themselves. Mm-hmm. In my case, huge fast forward, but I came from what was a couples therapist that was able to diagnose him. Mm-hmm. She then became an individual therapist. And then during separation, I left her therapy due to some issues. And she ultimately became my daughter's individual therapist.
Okay.
So there's other complexity to that. But I'll say this, I struggled internally and emotionally, because this, who was the individual therapist, the person I trusted, mm-hmm. I felt very exposed. It was very difficult to know. It's not something you do. Everyone should have their own therapist, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
first I was thinking that the therapist can sort of shed light on the situation, but did you feel betrayed by the person, that they were validating the other system and the other?
At the end of it, I will tell you that I think that her intentions are good. Mm-hmm. And I think that because she knows the family dynamic very well, she is doing the best job she can. Yeah. But I definitely feel there's ego involved in it. We're all human. And I think that she still made an error in not providing or recommending that everyone go get their own individual therapy. I think that was a big thing.
Okay. And who was paying the bill?
They're 60-40. So I pay 40% of the medical bills, and I have no choice.
Okay. And how are you doing today? Just you. Have you? Are you in a healthy relationship today? Are you? Being recovered?
Yeah, I'm honestly that I am in probably the best emotional place health-wise I could possibly be in. I think that the more that I watched the difficulty with what was happening particularly with the kids, I knew the only thing I could do, because I felt so helpless, was to work on myself and work on, the old family dynamics, and just get strong and get empowered and as quickly as possible, so that when, the ball bounced back, which it is, that I could be ready to, teach my kids still, and indirectly they are learning and they are seeing who I am. And yes, I've changed a lot, but for better. I'm growing tremendously. And just to answer the question about the younger daughter, she is she's taken my place. She is the new wife in town. And this is the problem.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So she struggled. And the therapist, we did have, that's why I brought the therapy piece. So we did have a group session very recently, and the younger daughter was able to put on paper and tell me all of her frustrations and anger. And there was a lot of blame going around. Of course, this is a part of the process. She needed to get it out of her system, and she did a fantastic job of it. And I was very much in the right state of mind to accept and listen and empathize with her, even though I completely agree. Because again, unfortunately, the arguments that she has are things that her father actually created, but I can't go there with her on it. It doesn't help her to heal.
No, that's where you have to hold your mouth. And I know we're really, really short on time. So I just wanted to give a little feedback that thank goodness your daughters are getting into teenage adulthood, and they're going to be pretty soon out of the hostage situation of childhood. I call childhood, sometimes it's a hostage situation, sometimes it's a good hostage situation with parents who provide all of the emotional nutrients, and sometimes not so much. So I think also having one daughter who's awakening to the truth can hopefully influence your other daughter, and seeing that you're healthy and that you've survived and you're a better role model. Well, that speaks volumes, right? So that if everybody could just stay healthy and use the opportunity to heal yourself, so that when your children do come to you, you're not this downtrodden mess, right? That then you just preserved yourself as a great role model of a parent. And of course, if you need more information, you want a copy of my book, or anything that we could do to help you with your parent alienation situation, you can always reach out. And I really do have a wonderful team of people that do this kind of work. So feel free to stay in touch with me, okay? And really appreciate you calling in.
Oh, absolutely. And I really just want to give a testimonial to, appreciating everything that you have done. And you really, really opened up a lot of doors for me to continue on this journey of mine. And I don't have, the anger and all those things that come along with it. I've healed fully.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate.
I really appreciate that. Have you read the book, Be the Cause? Have you read it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I very much appreciate it. And you're doing everything humanly possible to be the best role model. And now that you have 50-50 hindsight, right? You know what to look for in terms of not to hook up with and let your boundaries down with. And so that's why we have to psychoeducate ourselves, so that we can vet people better, get healthier, and not repeat familiar patterns. So thank you very much. I know the show is ending, and to my audience, really appreciate you tuning in, and reach out for those of you who need this kind of information. Please feel free to contact me or any one of my team members. So thank you, Jen, and all the best to you and your family.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, you take care too. And thank you, everybody. And good night, everyone. I'll see you next week.